This is Chloe on the AM show this morning talking about the policies around the housing that we've just been talking about.
Is the fact that we have a status quo in this country where 1.4 million New Zealanders rent, and we have a situation where the issues that we're facing with regard to the rental crisis and the housing crisis are not new issues. These are issues that other jurisdictions have dealt with.
Your solutions have been tried before and failed. I mean, a rent cap.
Rent controls. We actually currently have forms of rent controls, I must say. We have
nothing like this, though.
This will make it.
This is 3%. This has been.
It's funny when you go on the AM show and all of a sudden for Chloe it's 2 against 1. Have you ever noticed that?
Tried in other places, San Francisco, Germany, Massachusetts.
I'm so glad you raised those other examples.
And what did it do? It meant that landlords sold their places and rents. And those places weren't available to be rented. So if you take Queenstown or Waiheke Island, for example,
the places where the richest people in the country live, quietly.
You start putting rent caps on, what are people going to do? Sell their rental homes.
So I'm glad that you mentioned those international examples, because what those international examples tell us is that rent controls do work for people who are in rent-controlled accommodation. What they also tell us is that if those rent controls, and that's the point actually, if those rent controls are not universal, which is what it is that we are proposing, then you end up with market distortions, which is why you have to apply it across the market. So to the point that I was making before, we actually do have forms of rent controls already in this country. Right now, it's technically illegal for your landlord to charge you at a rent that is not in line with what the market is supposed to be. The problem is that is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because obviously landlords and property managers are setting the market at what they believe.
But why are you going after just rents? I mean, if you look at rents and the rate that they've gone up, and
this is called a whataboutism. This is now what he's about to do is go, but what about all this other stuff you could be doing as well?
In recent years, compared to fresh fruit and vegetables, why are you not putting controls on broccoli?
Because again, renting right now is a situation that is wildly out of control, and it is the foundation.
Is the price of broccoli, is the price fruit and veggies are more out of control?
We have a situation where residential tenancies where we can very clearly put in practice through those controls.
It's commonly known as 2 against 1, Chewy.
Contractual arrangements between landlords and between renters.
You could do that at supermarkets too.
We have international examples, Ryan.
What about?
You're not talking about supermarkets.
Have been put in place and they have worked successfully.
But why are you only picking on landlords? Why are you not picking on fruit?
Because Chewy, if you're going to do some work in the backyard, if you're not going to pull the weeds, there's no point mowing the lawns. Because, mowing the lawns by itself without pulling the weeds, there's no point. Do both or do neither. Because if you just mow the lawns and don't pull the weeds, then what about the weeds? When are they going to get taken care of, Chewy? What's the point?
First of all, Ryan, no one likes broccoli. Secondly, let's talk about rent.
All right, let's keep talking about rent.
Fruit growers and veggie growers.
Ryan, I find it mind-blowing that whenever we mention the rights of renters, all of a sudden we are somehow pitched as attacking landlords or property managers.
Yeah. You're eating into their retirement schemes, essentially.
Are we not
so of course they're going to
retirement schemes for renters in this country? 1.5 million New Zealanders in this country rent. It is not the case that that is a transient state for people anymore, unless you're reflecting on the fact that, as my written questions demonstrated just this past week, the average renter is in their rental property for approximately 16 months at a time. That is not a sustainable way of going about building a life, connecting into your community, or making those investments necessary.
David, does it make sense to go after, say, rents as opposed to anything else that you could pick off?
I was going to use an analogy you've kind of used. If there was a famine, I think the Greens' response would be, let's make it harder to farm, except, well, actually, they're doing that too. The simple facts are, once again, just as with their wealth tax, the Greens are trying to divide New Zealand. They're going after a group of people saying they're the baddies. If we attack them, it'll be better for you. We need to get rid of that sort of politics, not only because it's wrong to be divisive, but because it's practically wrong. What people who rent need.
Sorry, I tweeted this out today. Did you hear that point from David Seymour?
No, I was busy having an active brain aneurysm.
Quote, David Seymour, quote, I'll play it again. It's wrong to be divisive. David Seymour, without a hint of irony. You waiting for it?
Be better for you. We need to get rid of that sort of politics, not only because it's wrong to be divisive, but because it...
Without a hint of irony. It's wrong to be divisive.
Jesus Christ.
David Seymour.
Practically wrong. What people who rent need, and I accept there are bad conditions, there are high rents, but what people who rent need is a bigger supply with more landlords offering more homes, more choice, more competition. That's how you get higher quality in any other market. Now, if you put a cap on what landlords can charge, you increase their costs with more bureaucracy, guess what? Less people...
Now, can I just say this? Just because someone had a crack at me over the weekend about getting the words wrong, let me just say something quickly here. Do you know the difference between less and fewer? Fewer, for people who don't know, is if you can count it. Less is if you can't. Chewy, I'm less in love with you today than I've ever been.
Well, I know
Chewy,
that's a lie for a start.
Chewy, we've had sex on fewer days in the last month than the previous month. You can count them, it's fewer. If you can't, it's less. I never do this because someone had a crack at me getting a spelling word wrong. This is a leader of the country. You ready?
You increase their costs with more bureaucracy. Guess what? Less people want to be landlords. Less people want to build homes and rent them out. Less choice, less quality for people who are trying to rent.
And
it's just the most simple. It's the most simple. It's the most. Well, that's not true at all. It's the most simple economics.
What about?
Sorry, I was being pedantic Pat there for a second, but I felt that I could because, you know, all these smarties on the right don't seem to know how to use language either. Chewy, mate, this is your queen has spoken. What are your thoughts?
One day Chloe's going to snap and she's going to come off the back of that couch with a steel chair.
No,
like,
honestly, I was just waiting for it. We were about to show you another clip, and I'm just waiting for her to go, "Oh, David, shut the fuck up!" Like honestly, it's visceral. Like in this next clip I'm going to play you, you'll get that point, and you'll just be going. It would be normal and natural for her to say that.
Yep. Now, as Arrest JK says here, note Seymour is allowed to make complete sentences without interruption. Chloe wasn't even able to answer the question that Ryan posed that was ridiculously out the gate. Like, they know that Chloe's ridiculously across her numbers and she's excellent at explaining complex situations and policy. So the only thing that they've got is basically throw sticks through her spoke so she gets no momentum. It's infuriating. I want to hear her.
Yeah, and you're saying he gets more time, which is ironic because Sue says he's an idiot. And Sunset says Chloe is way smarter than Bridge and Seymour. JK says, what percentage of people's income gets spent on broccoli? It's a very good way of putting it, JK. Simon says, he doesn't actually say that. What he says is Ryan Bridge works for the ACT National Party. Nikki says, Ryan can't get a gotcha moment. Chloe's way too smart. Yeah, so I think most people there are in a great amount of agreement with what you hear. Vicky says, brilliant young woman, pedantic Pat and his black and white hat. Yes, fewer. It's one of the things I sticking to my kids, but only because people on the right have been criticising me for getting a dyslexic word wrong. I just thought, well, fuck you then. It wasn't Seymour, by the way, who did it, but anyway. Here's the thing as well. This is another clip for you. This is separate to it. I want to show, and I've said this before, right? I've said this before. Why has David Seymour turned into a cockwomble this election season? Well, more so. He's become an asshole. Like I actually think there's been a change in how he's choosing to speak. He, talking about basically talking down Rawiri and warning the nation of him, not going to Jacinda Ardern's final event, just not turning up. And now have a listen to this. Have a listen to this. And for those of you who are a supporter of David Seymour, well, you're not here, but if you are, just think about someone speaking about your sister like this or your mother like this, and let me know what you think.
Stick with what we're talking about, but so that the healthy home standards is being done, and there's still a bit of mould in the bathroom, and the landlord says, oh, well, that's because they're actually keeping the windows closed when they're showering and they're not wiping the mould down. I mean,
if more bureaucracy was the answer, then every rental would be a palace, because in the last 5 years we've had healthy homes, we've had the 10-year bright line test, we've removed mortgage interest deductibility, we've made it almost impossible to remove somebody. They keep introducing more bureaucracy bureaucracy. What we actually need is more supply. But they've got it so far wrong. Chloe's nice, she'll smile, it'll sound great, we're fighting for you, and their policies will have the opposite effect of what they promised. That's why they're so dangerous. That's why they're so dangerous, and that's why they have to be kept out of government.
David, what's wrong? What's patronising?
That is so deeply patronising from David to say those things about me as an individual. And I just have to say, David, that whenever anything is lobbied in your direction that is the equivalence of that, you get incredibly defensive. So if I may, back to the facts and the evidence that we're talking about.
It's true. You present it very well, though it's dangerous, and people need to see that.
Okay, hang on. I want to set some ground rules, because we're going to have these discussions. They're going to be more heated closer to the election. So would you like, Chloe, for David to not ever refer to you in a personal manner like that again?
What the fuck? Ryan Bridge is asking what? Would are you saying, Chloe, are you saying that you don't want David to make personal comments about you and have a personal attack against you personally? Can we set ground rules? Because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And like, I think maybe that David's right here to be able to have a crack. Are you saying you don't want him to take personal swipes at you? Is that what you're saying, Chloe? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying that when we have sat on this couch in the past and we have had these discussions, there is a frequency with which David will personally seek to attack me or the Greens. And if we are to talk about policy and to have a discussion about evidence, then let's do that. Okay. So back to the evidence and back to the policy. When we're talking about the healthy home standards, we know, based on my written questions again to the Minister last year, that the government is not keeping track of the compliance with healthy home standards. They have no idea how many landlords or property managers have self-verified exclusion from the healthy home standards. They also have no idea how many companies are holding themselves out as capable of verifying the healthy home standards. We have to reverse that by putting in place this rental warrant of fitness that works in tandem with a register for property managers and landlords. This exists in many different jurisdictions and actually is a protection for good landlords and property managers. It prevents things escalating to the tenancy tribunal. And rent controls, as I just said before, we have forms of that already exist around not charging more than what the market will bear. We just have to put some rationality and predictability.
So, David Seymour, and like I said earlier, there's a point there where it would have been almost appropriate for Chloe to go, "Oh, David, shut the fuck up." Like that probably would have seen the Greens skyrocket in the polls by 10 points. But the idea that she gets a personal attack, like basically, a patronising statement, almost about little girl.
Oh, it's stupid. It was mad patronising.
It's almost like little girl. And then what she does is goes, spin, here's the fucking facts, stick it up your ass. And it's just like, it shows the quality of the person that Chloe Swarbrick is, and it shows the quality of her kind of when they talk about the leaders of the future, she's always right near the top when it comes to, who's going to be running this country in 10, 20 years. And she's always up there in the conversation.
Yeah. I want to talk about two things. First of all, something that she mentioned there, which I'm not sure how many people know this. This surprised me when I read the story the other day. I was just looking for the story. I can't find it. But you can get an exemption to the healthy home standard, and you just basically ask for it. Right. And the reasons that you'd want an exemption is that you have plans to demolish or redevelop the house more fully in the short to medium term. Now, there are landlords out there that are, we're demolishing the house next year, so we don't want to do healthy home standards. And they have been doing that since the healthy home standard came out, year after year after year. And there's no one chasing these guys. The whole thing with healthy home standard is that the tenant could report breaches of the healthy home standard, and then they would directly get the money that the landlord has fined, right? So there's a punitive, the word's got, there's a punitive drive there, right? You're motivated to report your landlord for being a shitheel. But if they've already got that exemption, then it doesn't go anywhere. So if you're a really organized scumbag landlord, then you're going to get out of jail free card, and government's not doing anything to check up on that.
Yeah.
The second thing I want to mention is something that was right at the start in the first interview that we had with them, is they were talking about how it's always an attack on landlords, and that they're always chipping away at these hard-working landlords' retirement plans. Do you know what these shitty landlords are chipping away at on their tenants? their fucking lifespans.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, their kids are getting born with asthma, and kids are getting bronchitis, and people are having health conditions which we shouldn't be dealing with. You talk to anybody that comes to this country from Europe or Canada or North America, they look at the quality of our homes and they go, what the fuck? Did you know that someone's invented double glazing? You know, it's central heating. You know, you're a cold country. Why the fuck did no one put insulation in any of your walls until recent times? You know, this is what it's about. Our houses are shit.
Yeah. Completely. Let's have a look at some of the comments that have come in talking about Seymour being more of an arsehole now than ever. Sunset says, agreed, Pat. He's got more emboldened. Trouble is the media let him spout off all these untruths and bullshit. They don't dig deeper and hold him to account. And what you just heard there with Chloe is that she dug deeper. And, you know, just the facts, please, ma'am. Jeremy says, the way she turned that around is why I vote for the Greens. Yep. Another one from Sunset, good on her, get the convo back to the policy. I think it's good that she got the convo back to the policy, but I actually think it's also okay, on whatever political appropriate way you could say it, to also say shut the fuck up. She kind of did say that while talking about it being patronising. It's probably about as serious as a politician would say to another politician, but you know.
This is the double standard that she has to deal with, right? If she spoke over David the same way that he speaks over her, then a female politician will just get mischaracterized as being shrill and emotional and all of that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. It's bullshit.